Right, so today I'm going to talk about how I make the 308 caliber bullet whistle. I have a slightly different approach to this. So what we've got is we've got the 8mm opening at the top of the 308 casing, and we're going to need an inner which is approximately 12mm long. I use some brass tubing that I've purchased, but unfortunately the brass tubing is also 8mm long. So when I cut it to 12mm, it's basically not going to fit into the casing. Where my design is slightly different is I take the 12mm sections and using a Dremel cutting disc, I then cut a slot along the 12mm, which basically turns it into a spring. When you then solder on the end piece and squeeze this piece of copper, it reduces its size to about 7.9, 7.8mm, and it slots into the end of the bullet nicely, perfectly. So here you can see I have marked out about 14mm to allow for the cutting distance of this, and I'm going to cut 6 of these out. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to cut a slot right the way along to make 6 of these, so I can just then slice and cut them off. So I'm going to set that up and come back to you. So I've cut that off, and what you can see here is I've now got a piece of tube that's about 12mm long. If you squeeze, you can see it's a spring action. Now what I do is I leave this spring action in it because that holds it into the end of my bullet casing. So that spring action will hold that into the end really, really tight. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean these edges off, and then I'm going to set this up to solder on the piece of brass that goes across the bottom here, like this. That forms the whistle insert. Back in a bit. So you can see this, I've got the inner set up now in my vise. So I've got the piece of brass strip along the top and the piece that I cut here in the vise. I have put flux on both parts. I'm going to get ready now to heat it and solder it. So I've now heated this up and soldered it on. You can see quite a clean solder, and from the end, and this is the end that will go into the whistle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the Dremel, and I'm going to cut this off and then clean it up using a Dremel and using one of the sanding adjustments that I have for it. So using my ever trusty Leatherman, and now I just need to shape this up. pretty much perfect. Okay, so that's the shell inner done. This is for the whistle and for the inner. Finished. I need to do the outer. Well, to do the outside of the casing, what I've done is I've marked this 17mm along on the 308 shell casing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a small triangular file and just work this in here. Now what's massively important when you're doing this is that you keep this edge of the file at 90 degrees. So this is what gives the whistle its the shape of the hole, its unique shape, and then file 3. And so what you're going to do is you're going to keep doing that until you've got about a 5mm depth, 5-6mm depth on your whistle. I'll start off with a small file, and then I do actually finish off with a larger triangular file. Only on the 308, on the 223s the small file is actually enough. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and finish this one off, and then I'll come back to you. Right, you can see I've cleaned out all of the gum bits and the gum fin there. I've just used a file and I'm just basically in and out of here. Take all that gubbins out. Okay, so there's your whistle. Okay, so completely clean. The next thing I like to do is I clean these by soaking them for half an hour, 45 minutes in tomato ketchup. But what I do like to do is before I finish the inner, I like to just clean around the inside of the top and here with a piece of steel wool. Okay. Okay. Next, I'm going to insert this, so hopefully this will just slot in, and there you go. So that's my inner whistle, goes straight in there. And the important thing is to make sure that it is lined up. So I don't know if you can see this, but you can see that the metal strip that I put in is on the bottom and it's parallel to this cut here. Really important. You might have to fiddle with that to get the best pitch out of it. At this point I just test and make sure the whistle works. So and you can pop this back just a bit. You can push it backwards and forwards to see and get the best pitch out of it. A little bit more grime in there, which I need to get out with this. Perfect. Okay, so that's spot on. Now, the videos that I've seen before, they all suggest soldering this. Because the spring in here is actually quite tight, I don't solder it, and the reason for that is there's a risk that if you heat this up too much, the joint that you've already soldered for the reed or whatever it is in the front here is going to fall off. So I don't solder these. What I do is I use my Dremel with the sanding pad on, and very, very slowly, so on low speed, I just file this down gently, and what I find is I get a pretty good seal or overlap on the end of my whistle. Don't press too tightly and do it patiently. And so what I'm doing really is almost flattening out the top of the inner to make a lip that goes over the outer bullet. You can see that it's starting to happen already. this is working better for me than trying to solder this. And because of the spring that we have in our inner tube, it holds really tightly. And the next thing I like to do with the tip is just a bit of wire wool, very, very fine wire wool on the table, and just spin and turn. Gets off any burrs, and it actually makes the end nice and shiny. Okay. Now all that's really left is to wire wool this down. I like to wire wool it down with a little bit of teacup metal polish, and then I have buffing attachments which I'll use to get the final shine. And then I get you can see it. We'll come back to when it's done. There it is, fully polished up. You can see it's still a little bit pitted. I can cover that with some more wire wool and just try and get that off. And I actually said this was a 308, but this is a 7.62 round, I believe, from an AK-47. 308 is exactly the same size, so it's exactly the same process. So I hope you found this video handy and helpful. And like I said, there's other videos on YouTube that show you how to make these. This is just my variation, how I do it. Thanks very much for watching.